I was sitting on the porch of my house in Portland, Oregon, watching the autumn leaves slowly fall from the oak trees my late husband had planted decades ago. The cup of coffee cooled in my hands as I stared at the Social Security envelope that had arrived that morning. Those numbers reminded me that, in the eyes of society, I had already fulfilled my role. It was time to slow down, they said. Time to enjoy retirement, knit, tend the garden, and look forward to the grandchildren on weekends. But I had a secret burning inside my chest, a dream I had kept for almost 50 years. My name is Elizabeth, and this is the story of how I transformed my life when everyone thought it was too late. From a young age, I loved to cook. I grew up in a family where the kitchen was the heart of the home. My grandmother, an Italian immigrant, taught me that food wasn't just sustenance, it was love, tradition, connection. By the age of 10, I already knew how to make the perfect tomato sauce, letting it simmer for hours until each spice blended harmoniously. Throughout my adult life, I worked as a secretary in a law firm. It was a good, stable job with benefits. I married Robert when I was 22. We had 2 wonderful children, and I pushed my dream of owning my own restaurant to the farthest corner of my mind. It wasn't practical. We had bills to pay, a mortgage, school fees. The dream could wait. But life has a peculiar way of making us realize that waiting sometimes means never. Robert passed away 3 years ago. Cancer, quick and brutal. In his final days, holding his hand in the hospital, he made me promise something. Liz, don't let your dreams die with me. You always talked about that restaurant. Promise you'll try. I promised, but I didn't keep my promise. Not yet. Grief consumed me, and then came the fear. I was over 70 years old. Who started a business at that age? It was during Thanksgiving 2022 that everything changed. My daughter Sarah and my son, Michael, came for dinner with their families. As always, I spent days preparing everything from scratch. The perfect turkey with fresh herbs, creamy mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie with a flaky crust, homemade cranberry sauce that was my grandmother's secret recipe. The table was filled with laughter, stories, and that warmth that only a family gathering can bring. My 12-year-old grandson, Tommy, took his 3rd slice of pie and said something that kept echoing in my head. Grandma, why don't you sell this food? It's so much better than anything we buy. Everyone laughed, but Sarah agreed. Mom, seriously, you should think about this. Your talent is wasted just cooking for us. Michael, always the practical one, was more cautious. Mom, you have to think about your age. Starting a business is stressful. Maybe you could just do some dinners for friends, something small. There it was, the word that haunted me. Age. That night, after everyone had left and I was washing the dishes, I looked at my hands. Yes, they had wrinkles and age spots. Yes, my joints ached a little more than usual. But these hands still created magic. These hands still had stories to tell through food. It was at that moment, with my hands immersed in hot, soapy water, that I made a decision. I was going to open my own business, no matter what anyone said. The following Monday, I woke up with a determination I hadn't felt in years. I turned on my old laptop and started researching. How do you open a food business in Oregon? What licenses would I need? How much would it cost? The information was overwhelming: health regulations, business licenses, insurance, food handling certificates. My head was spinning. For a moment, I almost gave up. Maybe Michael was right. Maybe I was too old for this. But then I remembered something my grandmother used to say. Elizabeth, the best meals take time. You can't rush a good sauce. Perhaps building a business was like cooking. One step at a time, with patience and care. I decided to start small. I researched home-cooked food businesses and discovered Oregon's cottage food law, which allowed certain foods to be produced in home kitchens and sold directly to consumers. It wasn't a full-fledged restaurant, but it was a start. I went to the local library, yes, they still exist and they're wonderful, and sat down with a kind librarian named Marcus who helped me navigate the online forms. He must be in his 30s, but he never treated me as if I were incompetent for not understanding technology. "Mrs. Elizabeth," he said, "my grandmother started a sewing business when she was 80. She always says that age is just a number people use when they don't have better arguments." That made me smile and move on. With my cottage food license in hand, I realized I would need some initial capital: professional equipment, larger quantities of ingredients, suitable packaging. I decided to apply for a small business loan. The meeting at the bank was humiliating. The manager, a man in an impeccable suit who couldn't have been more than 40, looked at my application with barely disguised skepticism. "Mrs. Harrison, I see here that you are 74 years old." "Yes," I replied, maintaining my upright posture, "and 74 years of life experience." He smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile, it was condescending. "I understand, but you need to understand that culinary ventures have a very high failure rate, especially for, well, entrepreneurs at a more advanced stage of life. Have you considered investing your savings more securely? We have excellent retirement plans." I felt my face grow hot. "I'm already retired. I don't want a retirement plan. I want to build something." "With all due respect," he continued, flipping through the papers without really looking at me, "do you have experience in business management, digital marketing, social media? The market has changed a lot. It's not like it used to be." "I can learn," I replied. "Perhaps you should enjoy your golden years in a more relaxing way. Travel, perhaps? Spend time with your grandchildren?" I left the bank without the loan and with renewed determination. If they didn't believe in me, I would prove them wrong. I would use my own savings. It would be riskier, but it would be mine. The first thing I had to admit was, I didn't understand anything about modern technology. My phone was basically used for calls. Facebook was a mystery. Instagram might as well be in another language. But if women of my generation had learned to drive when it was scandalous, to work outside the home when it was discouraged, I could learn to use a smartphone. I found a technology for seniors class at the community library. The teacher, a young woman named Keisha, had the patience of a saint. She taught me about cell phone cameras, filters, hashtags, things that were probably obvious to any teenager, but for me it was like learning a new language. "Ms. Elizabeth," Keisha told me in our third class, "you have something that many young influencers don't have: authenticity. People are tired of fake perfection. They want real connection. Tell your story." That resonated with me. I wasn't trying to be something I wasn't. I was just an older woman who loved to cook and wanted to share that with the world. I created an Instagram account, a Grandma Elizabeth Cooks. I posted my first photo, a crooked apple pie with a burnt crust on one side. The caption, read, "First attempt at food photography. The pie is delicious even though it's not pretty, just like me." To my surprise, it touched people. I received encouraging comments from strangers. One woman commented, "My grandmother was 82 years old when she learned to use a computer. You're doing great." Every business needs a name, and I wanted something that captured the essence of what I was building. It wasn't just food. It was tradition, love, history. I spent weeks thinking. Elizabeth's kitchen? Too generic. The golden spoon? Sounded pretentious. Grandma's table? Too informal. It was Sarah who suggested, "Mom, you always say that Grandma's recipes are like hugs. Why not something like this?" And then it appeared, Nona's Embrace, traditional recipes with love. Nona was what we called my grandmother, and Embrace perfectly captured what I wanted people to feel when they tasted my food. Warmth, comfort, home. I used some of my savings to hire a local graphic designer, A university student named Maya who needed to build her portfolio. She created a beautiful logo, a wooden spoon wrapped in a stylized embrace with warm, earthy colors. "Mrs. Elizabeth," Maya said, showing me the final design. "My grandmother passed away last year, and her cooking was the best part of visiting her. I want you to know that what you're making is special. Don't let anyone tell you it isn't." Tears filled my eyes. Every word of encouragement fueled my desire to keep going. I started, selling at a small local farmer's market on Saturday mornings. My stall was modest, a table with a checkered tablecloth, baskets of artisan breads, jars of marinara sauce, chocolate and nut cookies, and my specialty, ready-to-bake frozen lasagna. The first Saturday was terrifying. I observed other stalls with young, energetic vendors with professional presentations. I felt like a fraud, an old lady playing at being a businesswoman. But then a woman in her 50s approached, picked up a jar of sauce, and inhaled deeply. "This smells like my mother's kitchen," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. "She passed away 5 years ago. How much does it cost?" $8, I replied timidly. "I'll take 3. She handed me the money and held my hand. "Thank you for doing this. I don't know your story, but thank you." That was my first sale, $24. I felt like I'd won the lottery. By the end of that first day, I had sold half my stock. I went home exhausted, my feet aching, but my heart overflowing. I had done it. At 74 years old, I had a business. Weeks turned into months. My presence at the farmer's market became regular. I started to have loyal customers, people who came specifically to my stall. I learned their names, their stories, their food preferences. There was Margaret, a night shift nurse who bought my lasagna every week because it was the only home-cooked meal she could get. There were Jason and Michael, a gay couple who loved my cannoli and always told me about their wedding plans. There was Mr. Chen, a Chinese immigrant who said my love for food transcended cultures. My Instagram grew organically. I wasn't polished or professional, but I was real. I posted photos in the kitchen in the middle of the night, with my apron stained and hair a mess. I shared stories about my grandmother, about Robert, about why each recipe meant something to me. A video went viral, unintentionally. I was trying to film how to make gnocchi, but I made such a mess that the camera got splattered with flour. I laughed at myself, saying, "Well, that didn't go as planned, but that's life, isn't it?" That video got over 100,000 views. Comments flooded in. "We need more grandmas on the internet." This is so refreshing. You inspire me to try new things, no matter my age. A year after starting, I was at a crossroads. My cottage food business was thriving, but I had reached the limit of what I could legally do from my home kitchen. If I wanted to grow, I would need to rent a commercial kitchen or open a physical location. It was a huge risk. It would mean serious investment, probably debt, and a lot more work. I was already exhausted most days. My back complained. My knees protested after hours on my feet. Michael was worried. "Mom, you've already proven your point. No one's calling you too old now. But this is another level. What if it doesn't work out? What if you lose everything?" Sarah, on the other hand, was encouraging. "Mom, when was the last time I saw you so alive? Not since before Dad died. If this makes you happy, we'll find a way." I spent sleepless nights weighing the pros and cons. Imaginary conversations with Robert, asking him what he thought. I knew what he would say. "Liz, what are you waiting for? Go and do it." Then I received an email from a young woman named Sophie. She had seen my videos online and wanted to share her story. Sophie was 28 years old and struggling with depression, feeling like she had wasted her life. Seeing me start something new, so late, her words, not mine, gave her hope that it was never too late to start over. "You saved me," she wrote. If you can do this at 74, I can fix my life at 28. It was that email that decided it. It wasn't just about me, it was about showing people, of all ages, that it's never too late to pursue a dream. I found a small space in the Selwood neighborhood of Portland. It was tiny, only 12 tables, but it had charm. Large windows, original hardwood floors, and a kitchen that, although in need of renovation, was well equipped. The rental negotiation was interesting. The landlady, a tough businesswoman named Patricia, was skeptical at first. "How old are you?" she asked directly. "Old enough to know what I'm doing," I replied, looking her in the eyes. She laughed. "Okay, I like you, but I want to see your business plan." I spent 2 weeks developing the most detailed business plan possible with the help of a free advisor from the Small Business Administration. When I presented it to Patricia, she was impressed. "You did your homework," she admitted. "Most people not even half your age don't have something this complete. You have a deal." The renovation took 3 months. I was there every day, supervising, making decisions, sometimes even physically helping out against everyone's protests. Seeing my dream take physical form was surreal. I hired a small team, 2 young cooks fresh out of culinary school who were eager to learn traditional recipes, and 3 part-time waitresses, including Sophie. Yes, the same Sophie from the email. She had moved to Portland specifically to work with me, saying she wanted to be part of something meaningful. The grand opening of Nonna's Embrace was on a Friday in September. I was terrified. What if nobody showed up? What if the food wasn't good enough? What if I'd made a terrible mistake? But when we opened our doors at 5 in the afternoon, there was a line on the sidewalk. My loyal customers from the farmer's market, Instagram followers, friends, family, and many curious people who had read about the entrepreneurial grandmother in the local newspaper. That night was a chaotic and beautiful blur. Dishes coming out of the kitchen, the clinking of glasses, laughter, the aroma of garlic and basil filling the air. I circulated among the tables, chatting with each customer, listening to their stories, seeing their faces light up as they tasted the food. Mr. Chen was there with his whole family. Margaret brought her fellow nurses. Jason and Michael reserved the best table to celebrate their engagement. And in one corner, sitting proudly, were Sarah, Michael, and their families, with Tommy wearing a shirt that read, "My grandma is CEO." There were problems, of course. The dishwasher broke down mid-service. We burned a batch of bread. I spilled sauce on my favorite blouse, but none of that mattered. We were making it happen. At 11 o'clock at night, when we served the last customer and closed the doors, I collapsed into a chair, completely exhausted. Sophie sat down beside me. "We did it," she said, smiling. "We did it," I repeated, hardly believing it. I'm not going to romanticize it. The first few months were brutal. Waking up at 4 in the morning to receive deliveries, standing for 12 hours, dealing with suppliers, payroll, health regulations, occasional negative reviews. My body ached in ways I didn't know were possible. There were times when I wondered if I had been foolish. One particularly cruel review online said, "The food is good, but it's sad to see an elderly lady killing herself working. She should be at home, resting." That hurt me more than I wanted to admit. But then Sarah reminded me, "Mom, you're more alive now than you've been in the last 10 years. Don't let strangers tell you how to live your life." I learned to delegate. I learned that I didn't need to do everything myself. My young cooks were talented and eager, and I began to see them not as employees, but as pupils. I taught them my grandmother's recipes, techniques that no modern culinary school taught, the love that needed to be put into each dish. And they taught me too. They showed me new apps for managing inventory, modern marketing techniques, how to use Instagram stories effectively. It was a beautiful intergenerational partnership. 6 months after opening, a food critic from a major newspaper visited Nonna's Embrace anonymously. The review was published the following week. In a world of fusion cuisine and molecular modernism, he wrote, Nana's embrace is a breath of fresh air, or perhaps more accurately, a warm embrace. Elizabeth Harrison, the 74-year-old owner and chef, isn't trying to reinvent the wheel. She's perfecting it. Each dish is a masterpiece of simplicity and technique, proof that decades of love for food cannot be rushed or replicated. Her story, starting this business at 74, is inspiring. But the food, frankly, speaks for itself. 5 stars. The review changed everything. Suddenly, we needed reservations weeks in advance. We were featured in local magazines and food blogs. A Portland television network wanted to do a segment on me. During the interview, the reporter asked, "What would you say is your biggest challenge as a businesswoman?" I thought for a moment. Honestly, convincing people that my age is irrelevant. I'm not an elderly entrepreneur. I'm just an entrepreneur. The number of candles on my birthday cake doesn't determine my ability to run a business. That video went viral. I received messages from people all over the country and even from other countries sharing their own stories of starting something new at unconventional ages. Today, 2 years after opening its doors, Nana's Embrace is more than just a restaurant. It has become a community meeting point, a place where generations mingle, where loneliness is cured with good food and genuine conversation. We reserve a table every Thursday for Community Table. Anyone eating alone can join in a communal meal. I've seen friendships blossom, business partnerships form, even a marriage result from 2 people who met at that table. Sophie is now my assistant manager and is planning to open her own cafe someday. The 2 cooks I hired are developing their own special recipes. Tommy, my grandson, works with me. During the summers, learning the business and already talking about studying culinary arts. But success isn't measured solely in profits or recognition. You measure it in people's faces when they taste something that transports them back to their grandmother's kitchen, in the tears of someone who has lost a loved one and finds comfort in a familiar dish, in the laughter that fills the restaurant every night. The greatest success? It's waking up every morning with purpose. It's knowing that I'm building a legacy, not just for my family, but for anyone who has ever been told they are too old, too young, or not the right type to pursue their dreams. If there's one thing I've learned in these 2 extraordinary years, it's this. Age isn't a number that defines what you can or can't do. It's simply how long you've been alive. And each year brings experience, wisdom, stories. When people stop me on the street now, and that happens often, they usually say, "You inspired me to fill in the blank. Go back to school, get a divorce, start painting, change careers, finally travel, reconcile with a child." And I always reply, "I didn't do anything special. I just stopped listening to the people who were putting limits on me." The truth is that society has expectations about what we should do at each stage of life. We should study, get married, have children, work, retire, slow down, disappear. But these are just narratives that someone else wrote. You can write your own. Yes, starting a business at 74 was difficult. My body doesn't recover as quickly as it used to. I need more breaks. Sometimes I forget things and need to make detailed lists. But I also have advantages I didn't have at 25. Patience, perspective, confidence that comes from surviving decades of challenges. Robert used to say, "Liz, you've always been stronger than you believed." It took me 74 years to understand that he was right. If you're reading this and you have a dream, tucked away, no matter your age, consider this your sign. The world doesn't need more people living safe, gray lives. It needs courage, passion, authenticity. They said I was too old to start a business. I proved them wrong. And you know what? That was just the beginning. If this story touched you in any way, Please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories about real people who defied expectations and followed their hearts. And you? Which city are you watching from? Share in the comments. I'd love to know where you are and what dreams you're pursuing, no matter your age.